Hey, hello, hi, welcome back to another voiceover edition. I'm going to be talking about the French Revolutionaries whilst building this adorable Rolife kit from their Super Creator line. And before you ask, no, this isn't sponsored. I bought this with my own money because I think they're super cute and I like instant gratification crafts like this. So don't at me. But if anybody ever wants to sponsor me, I'm down. Anyway, if you're ready, buckle in. Who were the revolutionaries exactly? This is a common enough question that Google will autofill a variation of it for you if you begin to look for information on the French Revolution. The unfortunate, or perhaps very fortunate reality, is that this question is far too simplistic. In this video, I'm going to explore who the revolutionaries were in 1789 when the French Revolution is said to have begun, following through to 1795, 4 years before Napoleon entered the scene. There was no revolutionary party before 1789. Therefore, revolutionaries before this time were generally unaware that they were revolutionaries, at least in terms of their role as the spark that lit the kindling in the greater French Revolution. Quote, social classes lived in considerable ignorance of each other, end quote, allowing each of the three estates to operate in relative autonomy from one another when it came to social issues up until this point. Until the Estates General in 1789, called for by King Louis XVI, quote, the social tensions plaguing the old regime emerged as a central issue of the revolution, end quote. Representatives of the three estates belonged to one of the three orders of society. On paper, each estate held equal weight when it came to petitioning and presenting before the king. However, in practice, the nobility dominated the clergy, resulting in an imbalance that disenfranchised the third estate, which was comprised of the peasantry. The fear held by the first and second estate seemed to lie primarily in the redistribution of power at the provocation of, quote, the people, who were beginning to campaign and print pamphlets calling for a by-the-head voting system, allowing for every member to vote as an individual regardless of their class or estate, which the now threatened nobility believed would weaken the strength and legitimacy of the power of the throne. The first journée, or demonstration of the revolution, was built by the third estate wishing to revolutionize the way their voices were heard. In the summer of 1789, rural members of this third estate, quote, mobilized to attack Lord's manors and destroy the bitter symbols of seigneurialism, weather vanes, protective walls, and especially property deeds, which were setting forth feudal dues that peasants were required to pay the lord, end quote. In August of that year, the National Assembly decreed the abolition of feudalism, and by late 1790, the abolition of nobility. Both were massive wins for the populace, though this success was cut short by a new system of disenfranchisement, which was developed in order to protect the previously noble and other upper-class members of French society. Blech. The revolutionaries were drawing the interest of more than just third estate members, increasingly bringing in members of the working class, the educated, and even members of the clergy. The distinction of third estate members and the working class may seem trivial, but thanks to the abolition of the feudal system and apparent forward progression, the members of the working class were further emboldened to demand for unity of society. Around this time, the revolutionaries had a visible calling card, the sans-culottes, whose ranks extended beyond hard laborers into educated men, such as Elisée Loustalot, Jacques Roux, and Jacques-René Hébert, who were radical club leaders. Don't at me on these pronunciations. The sans-culottes were arguably the first visible and organized revolutionaries, comprising of the working class and the upper middle class who managed them. Quote, through their daily activities, their great moments of protest, and their discussions of morality, politics, and the economy, end quote, they drove the course of the revolution. From the fall of Bastille in 1789 to the Tuileries Palace in 1792, the working class, artisans, and general populace in and outside of Paris drove protests, violent actions, and ultimately the arrest of the royal family, creating a political vacuum. From 1789 to 1792, it can be asserted that the revolutionaries in this journée fall into the category of the people, rather than the bourgeois. Violent, driven, and angry, these revolutionaries are, in my opinion, the most revolutionary of the bunch throughout the entirety of the French Revolution. 1792 was a massive turning point in the revolution, resulting in a huge shift of who was driving the bus, so to speak. In the fall of 1792, a new constitutional convention was held in an attempt to bring to fruition a post-revolution France. However, this revolution was far from over. It had simply shifted from a primarily grassroots effort to a nationwide political one. On one side was the Jacobin Party established in Brittany in 1789, which came to essentially be the party of the sans-culottes. However, by 1791, the ranks had been confined to only well-off men who espoused that they were speaking on behalf of the working man that the sans-culottes were originally comprised of. On the other, there were the Girondins. The Girondins differed from the Jacobins by being less focused on popular will and more focused on, quote, creating proper decision-making mechanisms to guard against the public's passions of the moment, end quote. By this point in the revolution, the primary revolutionary players had transferred from the people to the newly established representatives, who were comprised almost exclusively of members of the previous Second Estate and wealthier working class. By 1794, the revolution was once again being pushed forth by popular movement, resulting in governing committees such as the Committee of Public Safety silencing, quote, their most active popular supporters by arresting and executing radical club leaders such as Herbert and Roux, as well as closing down any attempts by the sans-culottes to organize efficiently. Confusingly, the artisans and laborers who were once leading the fray in the revolution were now working against their fellow revolutionaries. The transition of the governing committees back into violence and terror ultimately made them a target for popular political activism. By this point, the sans-culottes shifted the previously bourgeois clubs of the Jacobins and the Cordeliers, who were a radical leftist party, back to the artisans and working class members who had previously given the clubs their purpose, providing a venue where all citizens, including women, could participate in the politics of the revolution. By 1795, after the fall of Robespierre and the uprising in the spring, power began to fall away from the artisanal activists of Paris. Beginning in 1789, the French Revolution fundamentally changed the political and social landscape of France. Throughout it all, the undercurrent of the revolution was created by and for the members of the working class, perpetuated by disgruntled bourgeois. The most radical of the revolutionaries could be argued to be the radical club leaders, such as the previously mentioned Roux, but I still think that the most radical revolutionaries were the members of the Third Estate. The members who truly began the whole affair with a combination of politics and violence, creating a template upon which others expanded and built to create the political parties and committees that perpetuated the revolution in the mid to late 1790s. Without these revolutionaries, the multitudes of laborers who gathered to march upon their lords and to publish pamphlets of criticism, the members who stormed Bastille in 1789, launching the grievances of the National Assembly, from discontent to the first action of the revolution, there would have been no revolution. At least, not in the way that we know it today, and certainly not with such magnitude. Thank you all for joining me today. I, as always, had a lot of fun with this one. I hope you guys did too. If you like this kind of content, please consider subscribing, leaving me a like, maybe continue the discussion in the comments, whatever floats your boat. At the end of this video, there's going to be a couple of links to a playlist that has all of my other video essays that I've been posting, as well as like a suggestion that YouTube thinks that you might like. So if you want to stick around, that would be awesome. But otherwise, I will see you all in the next one. Bye!